A billionaire's baby hadn't eaten for 8 days. 9 specialists found nothing wrong. The most expensive tests in the world came back clean one after another, like cruel jokes wrapped in medical terminology no parent wanted to understand. Until the grieving maid did something that would destroy her life and save his. What happened that night was natural. What came after was a nightmare. But the truth hiding in a security camera would expose something far darker than anyone imagined. This is not a story about medicine. It's a story about mothers and the lengths they go to protect children, even children not born to them. The marble floors of the Ashford estate gleamed under crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. Every surface sparkled. Every corner held something priceless. The mansion sat like a crown on the hillside overlooking Manhattan, 50 rooms of perfection that photographed beautifully for magazines. But beauty couldn't hide suffering, and money couldn't buy peace. Inside the nursery, on the 3rd floor, a 10-week-old baby named Jasper Ashford lay in a crib that cost $12,000. Hand-carved mahogany, Italian silk bedding, a mobile of crystal stars that caught the light and threw rainbows across cream-colored walls. None of it mattered. Jasper was dying. His small face had gone from pink to grey over 8 days. His cheeks, once round and soft and now pressed tight against bone. His lips cracked and pale. His eyes sunken rimmed with purple shadows no baby should ever wear. 10 pounds at birth, 11 pounds at 6 weeks. Now barely 9 pounds. The pediatricians called it failure to thrive. Such a gentle term for watching a child fade like morning mist. Dr. Harlow Bennett, the best pediatric specialist money could hire, stood at the foot of the crib with a tablet full of test results. Normal, normal, normal. Every blood panel, every scan, every allergy test. Nothing explained why this baby refused to eat. I don't understand it. Dr. Bennett said, his voice tight with frustration. He should be hungry. He should want to eat. But he vomits everything. Every formula. Every temperature. Every bottle. Dominic Ashford, 35 years old and owner of half of Wall Street's most successful investment firms, stood by the window. He hadn't changed his shirt in 2 days. Hadn't shaved in 4. Dark circles carved trenches under his eyes. His hands shook when he tried to hold the coffee cup someone had brought him hours ago. The coffee had gone cold. He hadn't noticed. 3 months. It had been 3 months since he'd lost his wife Celeste in a car accident. 3 months of drowning in grief while trying to keep his newborn son alive. 3 months of watching everything fall apart despite his billions. Try another formula, Dominic said. His voice came out flat, mechanical, like he'd said these words 100 times. He had. We've tried 12 different formulas, Mr. Ashford. Dairy, soy, hypoallergenic, amino acid based, goat milk, everything. He rejects them all within minutes. Then try another specialist. You've seen 9 specialists, the best in 3 states. They all say the same thing: physically there's nothing wrong. This appears to be behavioral or psychological, but that doesn't make sense for a 10-week-old infant. Dominic turned from the window. His face had aged 10 years in 3 months. First, Celeste dying when Jasper was only 2 weeks old, her car spinning off a rain-slicked highway. Then losing himself to grief and work, burying his pain in mergers and acquisitions. Now he was losing his son, and all his money, all his power, all his connections meant nothing. Then, what do I do? The question came out broken. Tell me what to do. Dr. Bennett closed his tablet. Keep trying. Keep him hydrated. I'll be back tomorrow with another specialist from Johns Hopkins. But Mr. Ashford, although he paused, you need to prepare yourself. If he doesn't start eating soon, we'll have no choice but to hospitalize him with a feeding tube. After the doctor left, Dominic stood alone in the nursery. Jasper whimpered softly in the crib. Not crying. He didn't have the strength to cry anymore. Just small sounds that broke something new in Dominic's chest with every breath. I'm sorry, son, Dominic whispered. I'm so sorry. Your mother would know what to do. I don't. I'm failing you like I failed her. But sorry couldn't fill an empty stomach. Sorry couldn't save a fading life. 3 floors below, in a small room near the kitchen that used to be a pantry, Sienna Whitmore sat on the edge of a narrow bed and pressed her hands against her chest. The pain came like clockwork. Every 4 hours, a tightness that swelled and burned and demanded release. Her body didn't understand that her baby was gone. 8 weeks since the stillbirth. 8 weeks since she'd held her son Thomas for the first and last time. His perfect face peaceful, his chest forever still. 8 weeks and her body still produced milk. The doctor said it would stop soon. Said she just needed to wait it out. Pump and dump until the supply dried up naturally. But her body refused to believe her mind. Every morning, every afternoon, every night, the milk came. And with it, the memories. She'd named him Thomas, after her grandfather, had his blanket ready, had his room painted soft yellow, had dreams of teaching him to ride bikes and bake cookies and read bedtime stories. Now, she had a breast pump and a bucket in a converted pantry, working as a maid in a mansion where another baby lived. Another baby who was loved, who was wanted, who had everything except the one thing he needed most, the ability to eat. Sienna stood and walked to the small mirror, hung on the wall. 27 years old, red hair pulled back in a ponytail, green eyes that used to sparkle, freckles across her nose. She looked tired. She looked haunted. She looked like someone who'd lost everything and didn't know how to find her way back. But she was grateful for this job. Dominic Ashford had hired her 10 weeks ago, shortly after his wife's funeral, when Sienna desperately needed work after losing Thomas. He'd been kind, hadn't asked too many questions about the hospital bills she couldn't pay, hadn't cared that she had no formal experience as a housekeeper. Just said, "The house needs caring for. Can you do that?" She could, and she did. 6 days a week, she cleaned marble floors that never seemed to get dirty, dusted furniture no one touched, arranged flowers in crystal vases, kept the mansion perfect while the people inside it fell apart. The crying started again upstairs. Jasper, Sienna's chest tightened. Not from the milk this time, from something deeper. Something maternal that death hadn't managed to kill. She'd listened to that baby cry for 8 days now. Watched formula after formula fail. Seen the nanny Amber Sinclair try everything the doctors ordered. Nothing worked. And day by day, Jasper's cries grew weaker. Tonight, they were barely whispers. Sienna had noticed things about Amber. The way the nanny's eyes went cold when she thought no one was watching. How she seemed annoyed by Jasper's needs rather than concerned. How she disappeared for hours, leaving the baby monitors turned off. But Amber had come with perfect references. Dominic trusted her completely. Who was Sienna to question a billionaire's judgment? She was just the maid. Sienna closed her eyes and said a prayer. The same prayer she'd prayed every night since losing Thomas. "Please God, I don't understand why you took my baby, but please don't take another. Please." She opened her eyes. The crying had stopped. That was somehow worse than the sound. Midnight came and went. Dominic sat in his study on the second floor, surrounded by contracts he couldn't read and reports he couldn't focus on. The merger with the European tech firm needed his signature by morning. $300 million hung in the balance. His business partners called every hour. None of it mattered. On the monitor beside his laptop, the nanny cam showed Jasper's nursery. The baby lay still in the crib. Too still. Dominic's heart stopped until he saw the small rise and fall of Jasper's chest. Still breathing. Barely. Where was Amber? The nanny should have been there. Should have been trying another bottle, another technique, another miracle. But the nursery sat empty except for the dying baby in the expensive crib. Dominic reached for his phone to call Amber, then stopped. He'd called her 4 times today. 4 times she'd assured him she was doing everything possible. 4 times she'd looked at him with those concerned blue eyes and said, I promise, Mr. Ashford. I won't let anything happen to Jasper. But something was happening. Something was very wrong. Amber Sinclair had been hired 8 weeks ago when Jasper was just 2 weeks old and Dominic was drowning in grief. She came with what looked like perfect references, though he'd later learn they were forged. She seemed caring at first, professional, competent. But slowly, carefully, Jasper began to deteriorate. It started small, spitting up more than usual, fussiness during feedings, then refusing certain bottles, then vomiting after every meal, then losing weight. By week 6 of Amber's employment, doctors were involved. By week 8, specialists were baffled. And by week 10, this week, Jasper had stopped eating entirely for 8 straight days. A notification pinged on Dominic's laptop. The merger partners again. Urgent. Need response. Time sensitive. Dominic closed the laptop, turned off his phone, let the $300 million deal slip away into the night. Some things mattered more than money. He just wished he'd learned that lesson before Celeste died. She'd begged him to slow down, to spend more time at home, to be present for the pregnancy. But he'd been chasing the next deal, the next billion, the next trophy, to prove he was worth something. Now she was gone, and their son was following her. "I'm sorry, Celeste," Dominic whispered to the empty room. "I'm sorry I failed you. I'm failing him. I don't know how to fix this." The house remained silent. No answers came. At 2 in the morning, Sienna woke to a sound that made her blood run cold. Silence. For 8 days, Jasper had cried through the nights. Weak, thin cries that spoke of pain and hunger and confusion. But now, nothing. She sat up in her small bed, heart pounding. Listened hard. The mansion held its breath around her. No crying, no movement. No sound of a nanny soothing a baby. Just silence. Sienna's feet hit the floor before her mind fully processed the decision. She grabbed her robe, pulled it tight and stepped into the hallway. The staff weren't supposed to go to the upper floors at night. That was Amber's job. But something screamed inside Sienna's chest. Something primal. Something that knew, without knowing how it knew that something was very wrong. She climbed the back stairs, the ones the housekeepers used. Her bare feet made no sound on the carpet. The 3rd floor stretched before her dim, with nightlights doors closed along the hallway. Dominic's master suite at one end, the nursery at the other. Sienna walked toward the nursery like a woman in a dream, or a nightmare. She couldn't tell which. The door stood ajar. No light inside, no sound. She pushed it open. Moonlight streamed through the tall windows, painting everything silver and shadow. The expensive crib, the crystal mobile, the silk curtains, and in the crib so small it hurt to look at Jasper. His eyes were half closed. His skin had gone from grey to almost translucent. His lips moved slightly, searching for something that wasn't there. His small chest barely rose with each shallow breath. On the changing table, a bottle lay, on its side the nipple brown with spoiled milk. The smell hit Sienna sour, wrong, old. Days old. No Amber. No one watching. Just a dying baby in a room full of expensive things that couldn't help him. Sienna's nursing instincts kicked in, the instincts she'd developed during her pregnancy, reading every book, taking every class, preparing to be Thomas's mother. She touched Jasper's forehead. Burning. Fever of at least 103. His fontanelle. The soft spot on his head was sunken. Severe dehydration. His lips were cracked and bleeding. "Oh God," Sienna breathed. "Oh God, no." She rushed to the crib and lifted Jasper carefully. His body felt too light, too fragile, like holding a bird with broken wings. His head lolled against her arm. His breathing came shallow and fast. Fever burned through his small onesie. "No, no, no," Sienna whispered. "Not again. Please God, not again." She fumbled for her phone in her robe pocket, dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency?" "A baby. He's barely breathing. Fever. Severe dehydration. He hasn't eaten in, I don't know, days. Please, we need help." What's your location? Sienna gave the address. The Ashford estate. Everyone in the area knew it. An ambulance is on the way. It will take approximately 20 to 25 minutes to reach your location. 25 minutes. Sienna looked at the baby in her arms. He didn't have 25 minutes. His small body was shutting down, going into shock. What do I do? What do I do until they get here? Keep the baby calm. Keep him warm. Do you have any formula or breast milk available? Sienna's eyes went to the spoiled bottle on the table, then to the cabinet where Amber kept the formula. She had watched the nanny go through can after can, bottle after bottle, all rejected. But now, opening the cabinet, she saw something that made her stomach turn. The formula cans were expired, some by months, and there hidden behind them a small brown bottle with a dropper. Sienna picked it up, read the label. Ipecac syrup, used to induce vomiting in case of poisoning. But why would a nanny have this? Unless horror washed over her. Unless Amber had been making Jasper vomit on purpose. Ma'am, are you still there? The formula is bad, Sienna said, her voice shaking. It's all bad, and I think someone's been hurting him. The paramedics are coming. Stay on the line with me. But Jasper didn't have time to wait. His small mouth moved against Sienna's chest, searching, rooting, the instinct all babies had, looking for food, looking for comfort, looking for a mother. And Sienna's body responded. The familiar tightness came sudden and strong. The letdown reflex triggered by the baby's nearness, by the rooting by 8 weeks of milk that had nowhere to go. Her breasts swelled and ached and leaked through her nightgown. She'd pumped and dumped 3 times today, but her body kept producing, kept preparing for a baby that would never come, except there was a baby, right here, right now, dying in her arms. Ma'am, are you still there? Sienna looked at Jasper, at his searching mouth, at his half-closed eyes, at the way his tiny fists opened and closed, grasping for something, anything to hold on to. She thought about Thomas, about holding him for those few precious minutes after the stillbirth, about the milk that came 3 days later, milk he would never drink, about the doctors saying it would dry up, about 8 weeks of pain and waste and grief. She thought about the ambulance 25 minutes away. She thought about spoiled formula and Ipecac syrup and 9 specialists who found nothing wrong because they weren't looking for poison. She thought about a baby who'd given up fighting. She made a decision. I have to go, she told the operator. Please send help. Just please send help fast. She hung up. The room fell silent except for Jasper's weak breathing and Sienna's hammering heart. I'm sorry, she whispered. She wasn't sure if she was apologizing to God, to the baby, to Dominic, or to herself. I'm so sorry, but I can't let another baby die, not when I have what he needs. She walked to the rocking chair by the window. The moonlight made everything look unreal, like a painting, like a dream. She sat down carefully, adjusting Jasper in her arms. Her hands shook as she loosened her robe, as she guided the baby close. As she broke every rule and crossed every line and did the one thing her body had been begging to do for 8 weeks, Jasper latched immediately. The relief was instant and overwhelming. Physical, emotional, spiritual. Sienna gasped at the sensation, the release of pressure, the purpose, the connection. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she watched this baby, this stranger's baby, this dying baby, finally find what he'd been searching for. Peace. His eyes closed fully. His small hand came up and rested against her chest, holding on like he'd never let go again. His breathing slowed from frantic to steady. The fever in his skin seemed to cool slightly. Color returned to his lips, just a touch, just enough to notice. For the first time in 8 days, Jasper ate. That's it, Sienna whispered through her tears. That's it, sweet boy. You're okay. You're going to be okay. She rocked gently, humming a lullaby her grandmother had taught her. The same lullaby she'd hummed to Thomas in those few precious minutes. The same lullaby she'd heard Celeste sing through the baby monitor before the accident those last weeks, when Celeste was too weak to climb stairs but sang to her baby from her bedroom. Time stopped. The world narrowed to just this: a woman who'd lost her child feeding a child who was lost. Moonlight and shadows, grief and grace, death and life wrapped together in one impossible moment. She didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway, didn't hear the door open wider, didn't know anyone was there until a voice broke the silence. "What are you doing?" Sienna's head snapped up. Dominic Ashford stood in the doorway, frozen in shock. He'd been reviewing the Nanny cam footage. Something about the empty nursery had bothered him. He'd seen movement, decided to check in person, found something he couldn't process. His maid, his dying son, together in the moonlight, her robe open, the baby at her breast. For a long moment, neither of them moved, neither breathed. The air grew thick with questions that had no easy answers. "Mr. Ashford," Sienna finally managed, her voice breaking, "I can explain. But how did you explain this? How did you explain desperation and instinct, and the moment when rules stopped mattering? How did you explain that sometimes love looked like madness, and saving a life looked like crossing every boundary?" Dominic took a step into the room. His face showed confusion, shock, something else she couldn't name. His eyes went from Sienna to Jasper and back again. "He was dying," Sienna said quickly, tears streaming freely now. "The bottle was spoiled, days old. The formula in the cabinet is expired. I found ipecac syrup. Someone's been making him vomit, Mr. Ashford, making him sick. He had a fever of 103. He wasn't breathing right. I called 911, but they said 25 minutes and he doesn't have 25 minutes. Dominic's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. "I lost my baby." Sienna continued the confession, tumbling out like she'd been holding it back forever. 8 weeks ago, stillbirth at 32 weeks, and I still have milk. My body doesn't understand he's gone. And Jasper was searching. He was looking for... I couldn't just watch him die. I couldn't do it again. I couldn't lose another baby. She looked down at Jasper in her arms. The baby had fallen into the deepest sleep she'd seen him achieve in days. His small chest rose and fell in perfect rhythm. His face relaxed, finally free of pain. His hand still rested against her chest, tiny fingers curled in her nightgown. "I'm sorry," Sienna whispered. "I'm so sorry, but I couldn't let him die." The silence stretched. Dominic stood there, this powerful man who controlled billions, who commanded boardrooms, who'd built an empire before age 35. And he looked completely lost. Finally he moved, walked slowly to the rocking chair, knelt beside it, looked at his son's face, really looked for the first time in days. Jasper was peaceful, breathing steadily, color in his cheeks. The grey pallor that had haunted Dominic's nightmares had lifted like morning fog. "He's sleeping," Dominic said, his voice rough with emotion. "He hasn't really slept in 8 days, just collapsed from exhaustion. But this is real sleep." "Yes," Sienna said softly. "You saved him." "I don't know, maybe, for tonight." Dominic reached out, hesitantly, touched his son's small hand. Jasper's fingers instinctively wrapped around his father's finger. Such a simple thing, such a perfect thing. Something Dominic had almost forgotten babies did. "You said someone's been hurting him," Dominic said, his voice taking on an edge. "The ipecac, you think Amber..." "I don't know, I just found it, hidden. But Ashford, if she's been making him vomit on purpose, that would explain why no formula worked, why no doctor could figure it out. It wasn't a medical mystery. It was sabotage." The word came out like poison. Dominic stood abruptly. "Where is she? Where's Amber?" "I don't know. She wasn't here when I came up. The nursery was empty." Dominic pulled out his phone, started to dial, then stopped. "The paramedics. You called 911. Yes, they should be here soon. They'll have questions about what you did." "I know. I'll tell them, I'll explain." "Mr. Ashford." Sienna looked up at him. "Just tell them the truth. I'm not ashamed of what I did. If I had to do it again, I would." He stared at her for a long moment. then nodded slowly. The truth, yes, the truth. But the truth was complicated. The truth was more messy. The truth was that a grieving maid had fed a billionaire's baby. And no matter how pure the intention, the world would judge. Society would gossip. Lines had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. In the distance, sirens wailed. The ambulance coming up the long drive. Reality rushed back in. The paramedics arrived 6 minutes later. Two men in their 40s, efficient and professional. They found Dominic and Sienna in the nursery, Jasper still sleeping peacefully in her arms. "This is the baby in distress," one asked, clearly confused. The 911 call had described a critical situation, but the baby looked fine. "Yes," Dominic said, his voice carefully controlled. He was in crisis, severe fever, dehydration, not breathing properly. "But Miss Whitmore here, she's trained in emergency care." A lie, but a necessary one. She managed to stabilize him. The paramedic looked at Sienna, at the baby, at the way Jasper's hand clutched her nightgown. "What did you do, ma'am?" Sienna met his eyes steadily. "I got his fever down with cool compresses, got him hydrated, calmed him. He was in distress from hunger and dehydration. Once I addressed that, he stabilized. Not the whole truth, but not a lie either. We should still check him out," the second paramedic said. "Run vitals. Make sure he's really stable." Sienna reluctantly handed Jasper over. The moment the paramedic took him, Jasper's eyes flew open. He let out a wail that shook the mansion. His small body went rigid, arms reaching back towards Sienna. Hey, it's okay, little guy," the paramedic soothed. But Jasper wasn't having it. He screamed and reached and fought with surprising strength for a baby who'd been dying an hour ago. "He wants her," the other paramedic observed. Sienna stepped forward instinctively. The moment she was close, Jasper's cries softened. When she took him back into her arms, he quieted immediately, burrowing against her chest with a sigh of relief. The paramedics exchanged glances. They'd seen a lot in their years on the job, but this was unusual. They took Jasper's vitals while Sienna held him. Temperature still slightly elevated but coming down. 100.2, much better than the 103 it had been. Heart rate steady, breathing clear. Weight concerning at 9 pounds for a 10-week-old, but not crisis level anymore. "He should still see his pediatrician in the morning," the first paramedic said. "Get a full workup. But for tonight, he seems stable. More stable than the call suggested he would be." "Thank you," Dominic said. "I'll take him to Dr. Bennett first thing." The paramedics packed up their equipment. One of them pulled Dominic aside. "Sir, I have to ask." The 911 operator noted that the caller mentioned possible abuse. "Ipecac syrup. Expired formula. We're mandated reporters. We have to file a report with Child Protective Services." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I understand, and I want you to, because if someone has been hurting my son, I want them found and prosecuted." "And the nanny? Where is she?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." The paramedics left with backward glances and whispered conversations they thought no one could hear. But Sienna heard. Caught words like "unusual situation" and "will need investigation" and "child services will follow up." When the door closed behind them, the mansion fell silent again. Just Dominic and Sienna and Jasper standing in the marble foyer at 3 in the morning. "You should probably get some rest," Dominic said, though his eyes said something else. Said, "Please don't leave him." "If he needs to eat again," Sienna started. "Will you stay just for tonight in the nursery in case he wakes up?" It was improper. It was crossing lines. It was everything they shouldn't do. "Yes," Sienna said. "I'll stay." They walked back upstairs together, settled into the nursery. Dominic brought blankets and pillows, made a makeshift bed on the sofa near the window, watched as Sienna settled Jasper back into his crib. The baby whimpered once, reached toward her. Sienna put her hand through the crib bars, let him hold her finger. He gripped tight, brought it to his mouth, began to suck. "Hungry again already? Or just needing the comfort?" "He knows you," Dominic said softly. Babies know who keeps them alive, Sienna replied. It's instinct. It's more than that. They looked at each other across the dimly lit nursery. So many unspoken things hung in the air between them. Gratitude and confusion and questions neither of them had answers for. Get some sleep, Mr. Ashford, Sienna said. Morning will be here soon, and we'll need to figure out what's been happening to Jasper. Dominic nodded, hesitated at the door. Sienna, yes, thank you. For everything, for caring when you had every reason not to, for saving him when I couldn't. He left before she could respond. Sienna settled onto the sofa wrapped in blankets that smelled like lavender and expensive fabric softener. Through the crib bars, she could see Jasper sleeping peacefully, his small chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Color in his cheeks, life in his breathing. She'd saved him. Tonight at least, she'd saved him. But morning would bring questions, complications, judgment. And somewhere in this house or somewhere in the city was a woman who'd been poisoning a baby for weeks. Tomorrow, everything would change. For now, though, she let herself rest. Let herself feel just for a moment like a mother again. Like someone who mattered. Like someone who'd done something right in a world that had taken so much from her. Outside the nursery windows, the night began to fade. Dawn crept closer, bringing with it the light that would expose everything. Sienna closed her eyes and prayed. For wisdom, for strength, for the baby, sleeping feet away, who'd somehow impossibly brought a tiny piece of purpose back into her shattered life. She didn't know that Dominic had already made calls. To his lawyer, to a private investigator, to start gathering evidence against Amber. She didn't know that by noon, security footage would reveal the full extent of Amber's crimes. She didn't know that the choice she'd made to save a life would eventually cost her everything and then give her more than she'd ever dreamed. All she knew was that for the first time in 8 weeks, the terrible ache in her chest had eased. Not because the grief was gone, but because tonight her milk hadn't been wasted. Tonight, her body had done what it was meant to do. Tonight, she'd been a mother, and tomorrow could worry about itself. Morning came with the sound of shattered glass. Sienna woke to voices, angry voices, piercing through the nursery door. She sat up quickly on the sofa, disoriented. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Jasper still slept peacefully in his crib, one small hand visible through the bars. The clock on the wall read 8:15. The voices grew louder, coming from downstairs. You what? A woman's voice, sharp, cultured, furious. Mother, please lower your voice. Jasper is sleeping. Jasper is sleeping because some maid did. God knows what to him. Dominic, have you lost your mind? Sienna stood quietly, smoothing her wrinkled clothes. Through the crack in the door, she could see movement in the hallway below. A tall woman with perfect silver hair and a Chanel suit gestured dramatically. Vivian Ashford, Dominic's mother. Sienna had seen her in photographs throughout the house, but never met her in person. She saved his life, mother. She violated boundaries. Do you understand what this looks like? What people will say? A maid breastfeeding your son without permission, without medical supervision. It's inappropriate. It's disgusting. It's the reason he's alive. Vivian's voice dropped to a hiss that still carried up the stairs. Amber called me this morning, told me everything. The paramedics filed a report, Dominic. A report. This will be but investigated. Child Protective Services might get involved. Your reputation. The company's reputation. My reputation. Dominic's voice rose now. Angry. My son was dying. 9 specialists couldn't help him. But Sienna could and did. I don't care about reputation. Well, you should. You have a business to run. Investors to answer to. Boards to sit on. A dead wife's memory to honor. What would Celeste think? Don't. The single word came out like a knife. Don't you dare use Celeste's name to make me feel guilty for keeping our son alive. Silence. Heavy. Tense. Then Vivian spoke again, quieter but no less cold. Fire her. Today. give her severance, make her sign a non-disclosure agreement, and find a proper solution for Jasper before this becomes a scandal we can't contain. Mother, do it, Dominic, or I will call my lawyers. And you know I will. Footsteps retreated. A door slammed somewhere below. Sienna stood frozen in the nursery, heart pounding. Fire her. The words echoed. She'd known this was coming. Known the moment she made the choice last night that there would be consequences. But hearing it spoken so coldly, so certainly made it real. She looked at Jasper, still sleeping, peaceful, alive. Worth it, she thought. Whatever happens, he's worth it. The nursery door opened. Dominic stepped in, looking exhausted. He had changed clothes but hadn't slept. His eyes found Sienna's, and something flickered there. Apology, regret, resignation. You heard, he said quietly. Yes, I'm sorry. I tried to. It's all right, Mr. Ashford, I understand. But he shook his head. No, it's not all right. What you did was brave and selfless, and the world is going to punish you for it. That's not all right at all. Jasper stirred in his crib, making small sounds. Both adults tensed, waiting to see if he would cry. But he simply opened his eyes, looked around, and when he saw Sienna, his small mouth curved into something that might have been a smile, just a tiny uplift. The first smile Dominic had seen in weeks. He knows you, Dominic said softly. He feels safe with you. Sienna walked to the crib, looked down at the baby. Jasper reached up, tiny fingers grasping air. She gave him a finger to hold. He gripped tight, brought it to his mouth, began to suck. Hungry. He needs to eat, Sienna said. I know, but we can't continue what happened last night. Not without proper medical supervision. Not with CPS potentially investigating. I wish we could. God, I wish we could. But Mother's right about one thing. There will be questions, legal issues, and I can't put you through that. So what will you do? Dominic ran a hand through his hair. Dr. Bennett is coming at 9. We'll try the formulas again. Maybe last night reset something in Jasper's system. Maybe he'll eat now. Maybe. Such a fragile word to hang a baby's life on. And me? Sienna asked, though she already knew. The pause told her everything. I need you to come to my office, Dominic said finally. After the doctor leaves, we'll discuss arrangements. Arrangements. Another word for the end. Sienna nodded. All right. She stayed with Jasper until Dr. Bennett arrived 30 minutes later. The pediatrician did a full examination, amazed at the improvement. Temperature normal. Breathing clear. Color good. Still underweight, but the crisis had clearly passed. It's remarkable, Dr. Bennett kept saying. Truly remarkable. Whatever intervention happened last night worked. Can you tell me exactly what was done? Dominic and Sienna exchanged glances. We managed to get him hydrated and calm, Dominic said vaguely. The fever broke. He slept. Sometimes that's all they need. Dr. Bennett didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded. Well, let's try a bottle now. See if we can get him eating normally. They tried. Jasper took one sip, made a face, and vomited within seconds. Tried again with a different formula. Same result. Tried a third time. The baby screamed and pushed the bottle away, turning his face towards Sienna, reaching for her with both small hands. I don't understand, Dr. Bennett said, genuinely frustrated. He seemed so much better, but he's still rejecting all formula. But Sienna understood. Jasper had tasted real milk, had felt real comfort, had found what his body knew was right. And now they were trying to give him artificial substitutes. His body and his memory rejected them. He wanted her, and she couldn't help him. The realization broke something in her chest. Dr. Bennett left with instructions to keep trying, to stay patient, to consider hospitalization if Jasper didn't eat by tomorrow. At 10 o'clock, Sienna walked to Dominic's office on the second floor. The door stood open. Inside, Dominic sat behind an enormous mahogany desk, looking small despite his size. An envelope lay on the desk between them. Thick, heavy, the kind that contained money and documents and endings. Please sit, he said. Sienna sat in the leather chair across from him. It felt too big, too expensive. She felt like an imposter, a maid playing at being important. I don't know how to do this, Dominic said quietly. Don't know how to thank someone for saving my son's life and fire them in the same breath. It feels wrong, it is wrong. Mr. Ashford, please let me finish. He took a deep breath. My mother is right about the investigation. Child Protective Services will look into what happened. Questions will be asked, your background will be examined, and while you did nothing wrong, the optics are complicated. You're not a licensed nurse. You're not family, and what you did, however necessary, crosses professional boundaries. I understand. I'm not sure you do. He pushed the envelope toward her. Inside is $15,000, severance pay, far more than required by law, and a contract. A non-disclosure agreement. It prevents you from speaking publicly about what happened last night. To media, to social media, to anyone who might turn this into a story that hurts you or Jasper. Sienna stared at the envelope. All that money, more than she'd seen in years, enough to pay her medical bills from Thomas's delivery and death, to find a new apartment, to start over. All she had to do was stay silent about saving a baby's life. If I don't sign, she asked, then I can't protect you from what comes next. The gossip, the judgment, my mother's friends. They're influential people, Sienna. They can make your life very difficult. They can make sure you never work in this city again. More difficult than losing my baby. The words came out harder than she intended. Than being fired for saving yours. Dominic flinched like she'd slapped him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You don't deserve any of this. Sienna reached for the envelope, opened it, looked at the contract. Legal language. She barely understood, but the meaning was clear. Take the money, disappear, forget this ever happened. Forget that for one night she'd been a mother again. Can I have a pen? She asked. Dominic handed her one. His hand shook slightly. Sienna signed her name on the line, put the pen down, stood. Thank you for the opportunity to work here, Mr. Ashford. I hope Jasper gets better. I'll pray for him every day. Sienna waited, but she was already walking toward the door. If she stayed another second, she'd break, and she'd already broken enough. Can I? Dominic's voice stopped her at the threshold. Can I say goodbye to him? To Jasper just once? Every instinct screamed no. Seeing him again would hurt too much. But she couldn't be that cruel, not to the baby. He deserved better. Yes, she said without turning around. Of course. In the nursery, Jasper lay in his crib, crying weakly. Amber stood nearby, holding yet another bottle, looking annoyed rather than concerned. He won't take it, Amber said when Dominic and Sienna entered. I've been trying for an hour. He just screams and vomits. Give us a moment. Dominic said, his voice harder than Sienna had ever heard it. Amber's eyes narrowed when she saw Sienna. Something flickered across her face. Not sympathy, not concern. Something almost like satisfaction, triumph. But it was gone so quickly, Sienna thought she might have imagined it. Amber left without another word. Sienna approached the crib slowly. Jasper saw her and immediately reached up, crying harder, begging. She picked him up gently and he burrowed against her chest, searching with his mouth, breaking her heart with every movement. I can't, sweetheart, she whispered. I'm sorry. I can't help you anymore. But Jasper didn't understand words, only understood need and comfort and the scent of the person who'd made everything all right last night. His small body trembled with sobs. Sienna held him close, rocking gently, hummed the lullaby she'd hummed last night, felt tears slide down her cheeks and didn't bother wiping them away. You're going to be okay, she told him, knowing it might be a lie. Your daddy loves you so much. You're going to grow up strong and happy. You won't remember me, but I'll remember you. Always. You gave me something precious. You let me be a mama one more time. She kissed his forehead, breathed in his baby smell, milk and powder and something sweet and innocent. Memorized the weight of him in her arms. Then, before she lost her courage, she placed him back in the crib. Jasper screamed, reached for her with both arms. His face turned red with desperation. I'm sorry, Sienna whispered through her tears. I'm so sorry. She turned to Dominic. Take care of him, please, and Mr. Ashford, that nanny. Amber, watch her closely. Something about her isn't right. Then she walked out of the nursery, down the hall, down the stairs, out the front door of the mansion. The sun was bright, too bright. It hurt her eyes, or maybe that was the tears. She walked down the long driveway, carrying just her purse and the envelope. Behind her, she could hear Jasper's cries echoing through the open windows, growing fainter with distance, fainter, until she couldn't hear them anymore, but she'd hear them forever in her memory. Days passed, then weeks. Sienna found a small apartment in a rough neighborhood. The $15,000 went fast: medical bills, rent deposit, food, basic necessities. She looked for work, but every door closed. The gossip had spread faster than she'd imagined. Everyone in the domestic workers network knew. No one wanted to hire the maid who'd crossed that line. By day 12, the money was running low. By day 15, she was skipping meals. By day 18, she couldn't pay rent. She tried calling the few references she had, but they'd all heard the stories. Some believed the worst, that she was mentally unstable, dangerous even. Others simply didn't want the liability. On day 20, she was evicted. With nowhere else to go, she found her way to a bridge in Brooklyn where other forgotten people gathered. The homeless, the addicted, the ones who'd fallen through every crack in the system. She'd become one of them. The nights were cold even in late spring. Sienna huddled in the corner with a thin blanket someone had given her, trying to stay invisible. During the day, she looked for work. Any work, cleaning, cooking, anything. But with no address, no phone, no references. Doors closed before she could even explain. On day 23, she got sick. Fever, chills, coughing that rattled her chest, mastitis infection in her breast tissue from the milk that still hadn't stopped. Her body still thought she had a baby to feed. A free clinic gave her antibiotics she could barely afford and advice to rest and stay hydrated. Easy to say, impossible to do when you lived under a bridge. She wondered about Jasper. Every night, every day. Was he eating? Had they found a solution, or had he been hospitalized with a feeding tube like Dr. Bennett warned? The NDA prevented her from contacting the Ashfords. She couldn't call, couldn't check, could only lie awake at night and pray. On day 26, she stopped caring whether she lived or died. What was the point? Her baby was gone. Jasper was beyond her reach. Her life had unraveled completely. She'd saved a life and lost her own in the process. She lay on cardboard, staring at the graffiti on the bridge underside and waited for whatever came next. What came next was Dominic Ashford. But first he had to face the truth. On day 5 after Sienna left, Jasper was hospitalized. The feeding tube doctor Bennett had warned about became necessary. The baby had lost 3 more pounds, was down to 6 pounds at 10 weeks old. Critical. Dominic sat in the hospital room watching machines feed his son and felt his world collapse. Every formula failed. Every specialist was baffled. They'd run every test twice. Found nothing. On day 10, out of desperation, Dominic finally did what he should have done from the beginning. He watched the security footage. All of it. Not just the night Sienna fed Jasper, but everything before. Weeks of footage. 8 weeks of Amber's employment. What he saw made him vomit. There was Amber night after night late when everyone slept, pouring good formula down the drain, replacing it with expired formula from cans she'd brought herself, adding drops from a small bottle to fresh formula. The bottle was later tested ipecac syrup mixed with small amounts of antifreeze, enough to make Jasper violently ill, not enough to kill quickly, but enough to simulate a mysterious illness. There was Amber on the phone, voice low. It's working. The baby's getting sicker. Once he's gone, Dominic will be vulnerable, grief-stricken. That's when I make my move. And the inheritance, all of it will be mine eventually. There was Amber's face when doctors found nothing wrong. Satisfaction, almost pleasure. The pieces came together with horrifying clarity. Amber Sinclair wasn't just a nanny, she was the illegitimate daughter of Dominic's former business partner, the man Dominic had bought out 3 years ago when the partner's company failed. The man who died broke and bitter, blaming Dominic for his ruin. Amber had come here for revenge and for money. She'd planned to kill Jasper, slowly position herself as Dominic's emotional support, and eventually claim a share of the Ashford fortune through manipulation or marriage. But Sienna had interrupted the plan. The night Sienna fed Jasper, Amber had been out with her boyfriend, confident the baby would be dead by morning. She'd given him an extra dose of poison before leaving. It should have been fatal, but Sienna had saved him, and Amber had panicked, called Vivian, spun the story to make Sienna look crazy, pushed hard for Sienna to be fired and silenced. It had worked. Dominic played the footage for his lawyer, for the police, for Child Protective Services. The evidence was overwhelming. Amber Sinclair was arrested on day 12, charged with attempted murder, child endangerment fraud, and assault with a deadly weapon. She confessed within hours, not out of remorse, out of rage that her plan had failed. He wasn't supposed to survive, she screamed at the police. That maid ruined everything. She should have stayed fired, should have stayed gone. But by then Dominic had bigger problems. Jasper was still in the hospital, still on the feeding tube. The doctors had flushed the poison from his system, but the psychological damage remained. The baby didn't trust anyone, wouldn't let anyone feed him, wouldn't take a bottle from nurses, from Dominic, from specialists. He's given up, Dr. Bennett said on day 15. He's developed such severe feeding aversion from the trauma that he won't eat. Even though his body needs food, his mind refuses it. It's called pediatric feeding disorder triggered by trauma. What do I do? Dominic asked, his voice broken. Find whoever he trusts, whoever made him feel safe. That's the only person who might be able to reach him now. Dominic knew who that was, but finding Sienna proved almost impossible. She had no phone, no address, had seemingly disappeared. Dominic hired 3 private investigators, gave them Sienna's description, her background, everything he knew. Sent them to search shelters, hospitals, anywhere someone might end up after losing everything. On day 23, one of them called. I found her. But Mr. Ashford, you need to come fast. She's not well. The bridge in Brooklyn was cold and dark, even in the middle of the day. Dominic's car pulled up as close as it could get. He climbed out his expensive suit, attracting stares from the people living rough. An older man approached him, Howard, the outreach worker, who'd called the investigator. She's over there, Howard said quietly, pointing to a corner under the bridge. Be gentle, sir. She's been through hell. Dominic walked carefully through the camp, past people who'd lost everything, past faces that had given up hope, and there, curled in the corner on cardboard, covered by a thin blanket, was Sienna. His breath caught. She'd lost weight. Her red hair was tangled and dirty, her skin pale except for the flush of fever on her cheeks. Her clothes, the same clothes she'd worn when she left the mansion, were filthy and torn. She looked like a ghost, like someone who was halfway between living and dying. Sienna, Dominic said softly, kneeling beside her. Her eyes opened slowly, confused, unfocused. Am I dreaming? No, I'm here. I'm real. I've been looking for you for 23 days. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. Because I was wrong. Because I need you. Because Jasper needs you. At the mention of Jasper, Sienna's eyes sharpened. Is he okay? No. He's in the hospital. He won't eat. He's on a feeding tube. He's been poisoned for weeks, Sienna. Amber was trying to kill him. We have her on video. She's been arrested. But Jasper, he's traumatized. He won't trust anyone. Won't let anyone feed him. The doctors say he needs whoever made him feel safe. Tears slid down Sienna's dirty cheeks. He needs his mother. He needs Celeste. She's gone. But you made him feel safe that night. You saved him. And I think you're the only one who can save him again. Sienna tried to sit up. The world spun. Dominic caught her, held her steady. I can't, she said. Look at me. I'm sick. I'm homeless. I can't help anyone. Then let me help you, please. Let me take you to a hospital. Get you well. And then if you're willing, come back. Help me save my son. I'm begging you, Sienna. I know I don't deserve your help after what I did, but Jasper deserves a chance, and you're his only chance." Sienna looked at him for a long moment, at this man who'd fired her, who'd chosen reputation over her dignity, who'd let her fall into hell while he lived in his mansion. But she also saw genuine remorse, genuine desperation. And beyond him, beyond all of it, she saw Jasper, that small innocent baby who'd done nothing wrong, who'd been poisoned and traumatized, and was now suffering because adults had failed him. "All right," she whispered. "I'll come. For Jasper." Dominic closed his eyes in relief. "Thank you. God, thank you." He helped her to her feet. She swayed. He caught her, lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing, carried her through the camp toward his car. "I'll pay you," Dominic said as they walked. "Whatever you need, a salary, a home, medical care, everything." "I don't want your money," Sienna said quietly. "I just want Jasper to be okay. He will be. With you he will be." They drove to the hospital. Sienna was admitted immediately. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, mastitis, pneumonia. The doctor said if she'd waited another few days, they might have lost her. Dominic sat beside her hospital bed all night, watching her sleep, wondering how he'd become the kind of man who let this happen to someone who'd saved his son. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her sleeping form. "I'm so sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right, if you let me." 3 days later, Sienna was well enough to see Jasper. Dominic wheeled her to the pediatric wing. She wore clean clothes from the hospital gift shop. Her hair was washed, but she still looked fragile, still healing. They reached Jasper's room. The baby lay in a bed too big for him. Machines beeped steadily. An IV fed nutrition into his small arm. The feeding tube ran through his nose. He was asleep, but it wasn't peaceful sleep. His small face was pinched, his hands clenched even in unconsciousness. Sienna's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh baby, what did she do to you?" She stood still, shaky but determined, and walked to the bed, sat carefully on the edge, reached out and touched Jasper's hand. His eyes opened immediately. For a moment, he just stared, processing. Then recognition flickered. His eyes widened. His mouth opened. "Hi, sweetheart," Sienna whispered. "I'm here. I'm sorry I left. I'm here now." Jasper's face crumpled. He let out a wail, not of pain but of relief, mixed with betrayal, mixed with need. His small hands reached for her. Sienna carefully picked him up, tubes and all, held him close, felt his small body shake with sobs. "I know, baby. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She rocked him gently, hummed the lullaby, and slowly, so slowly, Jasper's cries quieted. His body relaxed. His breathing steadied. The nurse who'd been monitoring the machines looked up in shock. "He's calming down. He hasn't calmed down for anyone in 2 weeks." Dominic stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face, watching his son find peace for the first time since Sienna left. "You're staying," Dominic said. Not a question, a statement, a plea. "Please tell me you're staying." Sienna looked up at him over Jasper's small head. "I'll stay, but not as a maid, not as hired help. If I'm going to help Jasper heal, I need to be treated as part of his care team, respected, included in decisions. Done. Anything, everything. And I need my own space, my own home. Not in your house, nearby but separate. I'll buy you a house right next door to the estate. I don't want you to buy me a house. I want you to help me get back on my feet so I can take care of myself." Dominic nodded. "All right, we'll do it your way. Just please don't leave again. He can't survive losing you twice." "Neither can I," his eyes said. But he didn't speak those words aloud. Over the next week, a plan took shape. Dominic hired a team pediatricians, child psychologists, lactation consultants. They all agreed Jasper needed to rebuild trust, and the best way to do that was through the person he'd bonded with, Sienna. The doctors proposed a program: supervised feedings, medical oversight, slow reintroduction to bottles and formula, but starting with what Jasper knew and trusted. "You're essentially asking her to be a wet nurse." One doctor said bluntly. It's an old practice, not common anymore. But in cases of severe feeding trauma, sometimes it's the only option. Will you do it? Dominic asked the Sienna. Temporarily, just until he's strong enough to transition to bottles. Sienna looked at Jasper, at this baby who'd been poisoned and traumatized, who'd lost his mother, who'd found comfort with her and then lost her too. Yes, she said, I'll do it. The program began. Day 1, Jasper latched on and ate for the first time in 3 weeks. The relief was instant. Color flooded back into his small face. His eyes brightened. Day 3, he'd gained 4 ounces. Day 7, he'd gained 12 ounces. Day 10, the feeding tube came out. Day 14, Dr. Bennett declared him out of danger. It's remarkable, the doctor said. I have never seen a recovery like this. You saved him, Miss Whitmore, twice now. But it wasn't just Jasper who was healing. Sienna was too, with proper food and rest and medical care. Her strength returned. The pneumonia cleared. The mastitis healed. The weight came back. And slowly, carefully, she began to trust again. Trust that she wouldn't be cast out. Trust that saving Jasper had been right. Trust that maybe, just maybe, her life could have purpose again. Dominic kept his word. He rented her a small house not next door, but 10 minutes from the estate, close enough to care for Jasper, far enough to have her own space. He paid her a salary, not as a maid, as Jasper's caregiver, a legitimate position with benefits and respect. And he did something else, something Sienna didn't learn about until later. He hired lawyers to go after everyone who'd spread gossip about her, everyone who'd refused to hire her, everyone who'd contributed to her homelessness. He didn't sue them. He simply made sure they knew the truth, that Sienna had saved a baby from a murderer, that she was a hero, not a scandal. Slowly, the narrative changed. By week 6, Sienna could walk into stores without whispers. By week 8, former employers were calling, apologizing, asking if she needed anything. By week 10, a journalist wanted to write her story. No, Sienna said immediately. I don't want attention. I just want Jasper to be healthy. The trial is in 2 months, Dominic said gently. Amber's lawyer is going to try to paint her as mentally ill, as a victim of her father's grudge. They're going to try to get sympathy. But if people know the full story, what she did, what you did, justice has a better chance. Sienna thought about it, about Jasper, about all the other babies who might be hurt by people like Amber if she got a light sentence. All right, she said. Tell the story, but tell all of it, the good and the bad, the mess and the miracle. The article came out 2 weeks before the trial. It went viral immediately. Hero Maid saves billionaire's baby from murderous nanny, read the headline. But the story beneath was nuanced, honest. It talked about Sienna's loss, about the night she made an impossible choice, about being fired and left homeless, about Amber's systematic poisoning, about finding Sienna under a bridge, about Jasper's recovery. The internet exploded. Some people called Sienna a hero. Others debated the ethics of what she'd done. Everyone had an opinion, but the one thing they all agreed on, Amber Sinclair was a monster. When the trial came, the courtroom was packed. Sienna testified, told the jury everything. About finding Jasper dying, about making the choice to feed him, about finding the ipecac, about everything. Amber's lawyer tried to paint Sienna as emotionally unstable. You just lost your baby. You weren't thinking clearly. Maybe you imagined the poison. I didn't imagine anything, Sienna said firmly. There's video evidence, test results, medical records. Your client poisoned a baby for 2 months. She documented it in journals. She confessed. Facts don't care about your narrative. The prosecution showed the security footage. 60 days of Amber systematically poisoning Jasper. The audio of her phone call talking about the inheritance. The journals where she tracked doses. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge showed no mercy. You targeted the most innocent among us. The judge said, her voice hard. You took advantage of trust. You spent months causing suffering to a helpless infant. You showed no remorse, no humanity. You deserved none in return. 25 years in prison, no possibility of parole for 15. Amber screamed as they led her away. It wasn't supposed to end like this. He was supposed to die. She ruined everything. Even in the end, she showed no remorse, only rage that her plan had failed. After the trial, life slowly returned to normal. Jasper thrived. By 6 months after Sienna's return, he was a happy, healthy baby. Eating from bottles now, growing, laughing. No signs of the trauma except a fierce attachment to Sienna. He called her Mama. The first time he said it, Sienna froze, looked at Dominic uncertainly. Should I correct him? Dominic's eyes were suspiciously wet. No, if that's what he needs to call you, that's what he should call you. Celeste would understand. She'd be grateful. And Sienna realized she was grateful too. Grateful for this second chance at motherhood. Different than she'd imagined with Thomas. But no less real, no less precious. 3 months after the trial, the mayor's office called. They wanted to give Sienna an award. The Citizen Hero Award, the mayor's assistant explained. For extraordinary courage in protecting a child, there'll be a ceremony. Press, recognition. Sienna wanted to say no, but Dominic encouraged her. Let people celebrate you. You deserve it. And it might inspire others to listen to their instincts to act when they see something wrong. So she accepted. The ceremony was held on a crisp October morning. Sienna wore a simple dress, navy blue. Professional, nothing fancy. Jasper sat in her lap, now a year old, playing with the medal around her neck. The mayor gave a speech about courage and sacrifice, about how one person's choice could change the world, or at least one small person's world. Then Dominic spoke. Sienna Whitmore lost her own baby and somehow found the strength to love mine. She sacrificed everything, her job, her home, her dignity to save a child not born to her. She is the mother Jasper needed when we failed him. She is a hero, and we're grateful every day that she chose to stay. As he spoke, Jasper looked up at Sienna and said loud enough for the microphones to catch, "Mama pretty." The crowd laughed. Warm, genuine. The scandal had transformed into a story of triumph. After the ceremony, reporters wanted interviews. But Dominic ushered Sienna and Jasper through a side exit. "I thought you'd want to avoid the circus," he said with a small smile. "Thank you." They drove not to the Manhattan estate but to a new house in Connecticut. Dominic had bought it 3 months ago. A fresh start, away from the mansion where Celeste had died, where Amber had done her evil work, away from memories that hurt more than they healed. "I've been thinking," Dominic said as they drove. "This house is too big for just me and Jasper. There's a guest wing, completely separate entrance. Your own space, but close enough to care for Jasper whenever he needs you. Dominic, just consider it. No strings, no expectations, just proximity. For Jasper's sake." Sienna looked at Jasper in her arms, at this baby who'd become her world, and she thought about going home alone every night, leaving him, wondering if he was okay. "All right," she said. "I'll consider it." Their house in Connecticut was beautiful in a way the Manhattan estate had never been. Smaller, more intimate, surrounded by trees instead of other mansions. A garden where roses bloomed. Celeste's roses, transplanted carefully. Sienna moved into the guest wing a week after the award ceremony. It was perfect. Large bedroom, sitting room, kitchenette, her own entrance. Privacy when she wanted it, but connected to the main house through a hallway, close enough to hear if Jasper cried. The first night she lay awake wondering if she'd made the right choice. This felt like more than just proximity. It felt like family, and that terrified her. What if Dominic changed his mind again? What if society judged? What if she was setting herself up for another fall? But then she heard Jasper crying. Not distress, just waking up wanting comfort. And before she could overthink it, she was walking down the hallway to his room. Dominic was already there, rocking Jasper gently. "Sorry, did he wake you?" "No, I wasn't asleep yet. Want to take over? He usually settles faster with you." Sienna took the toddler. Jasper immediately burrowed against her, making soft, sleepy sounds. Within minutes, he was out again. You have the magic touch, Dominic said softly, watching them. He just knows I'll always come when he calls. So do I. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning neither of them was quite ready to examine. Sienna laid Jasper back in his crib, smoothed his hair. Good night, sweet boy. Good night, Dominic echoed. They walked to the hallway together, stood at the point where their paths would diverge, him to the master suite, her back to the guest wing. Thank you, Dominic said, for being here, for everything. He's worth it. I hope someday you'll think I am too. Before Sienna could respond, Dominic had turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone with her heart pounding and her mind racing with possibilities she didn't dare name. Months passed. Seasons changed. By spring, they'd fallen into a rhythm. Sienna cared for Jasper during the day. Dominic joined them for meals. They took walks together in the garden, read stories together before bed, became without quite realizing it a family. But they never spoke about the future, never defined what they were to each other. Just existed in this careful space between employer and friend, between caregiver and something more. Then on a rainy April afternoon, Dominic found something. He'd been going through Celeste's things, finally ready to sort through boxes that had been in storage since the accident. And there at the bottom of a trunk was a journal he'd never seen. Leather-bound, well-used, Celeste's handwriting. He opened it with shaking hands, read entries from their courtship, their wedding, her pregnancy, each word a precious gift and a painful reminder. Then he reached the final entry, dated 2 days before she died. I'm scared, not just of the baby coming though, that terrifies me too, but scared of something else, a feeling I can't shake, like time is running out. There's a woman who works here, Sienna. She lost her baby this week. I saw her in the garden crying like her heart was broken. I wanted to comfort her but didn't know what to say. What words could possibly help, but I watched her. And I saw something. A gentleness, a strength. The kind of woman who would love a child not her own. The kind of woman who understands loss and still chooses kindness. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe because I have a feeling, a premonition, that something is about to go wrong. That I won't get to raise our son. That he'll need someone. If that happens, if I'm gone, I hope Dominic finds someone like her. Someone who knows how to love through grief. Someone who would protect our baby the way I would. Not a replacement. Never that. But someone who could give Jasper what I can't anymore. Love. Safety. A mother's touch. I know if anything happens to me, God will send someone. And maybe it will be her. The woman crying in my garden. The woman who understands loss. Maybe she's here for a reason. If you're reading this, Dominic, and I'm not there, don't fight it. Don't let pride or propriety stop you from accepting help. Jasper will need love, more than rules, more than what people think. Let him be loved by whoever can give it. That's all I want. That's all that matters. Love him for me. And let yourself be loved too. You deserve it. Even if you don't think you do. Especially then. Dominic read the entry 3 times. 4. 5. His wife had known. Somehow she'd known. Had seen Sienna and recognized something. Had given her blessing before anyone even knew it would be needed. Celeste. Dominic whispered, tears flowing freely. You knew. You always knew. That evening, he asked Sienna to meet him in the garden. She came carrying Jasper on her hip. The toddler was almost 18 months old now, walking, talking in small sentences, bright and curious and healthy. Everything his mother would have wanted. I need to show you something, Dominic said. He handed her the journal. Open to Celeste's final entry. Sienna read it slowly. Her hands began to shake. Tears filled her eyes. She knew, Sienna whispered. Somehow she knew. She chose you. Before either of us understood what that meant, she chose you for Jasper. And I'm thinking, Dominic's voice broke. I think she chose you for me too. Sienna looked up at him, saw vulnerability in his eyes, saw fear and hope and something that looked like love. Dominic, I loved my wife. I'll always love her. She gave me Jasper. She gave me the best years of my life. But she also gave me permission to love again, to accept help, to not let pride stop me from being happy. He stepped closer. I'm not asking you to replace her. No one could. But I'm asking if you could build something new with me. A family that honors Celeste by living the way she'd want. With love, with courage, with openness to what's real even when it's unexpected. He knelt, right there in the garden under Celeste's roses, pulled the box from his pocket, opened it. The ring inside wasn't a diamond. It was a pearl surrounded by small rubies and a tiny emerald. Celeste's birthstone was pearl, Dominic explained. Jasper's is ruby, and yours is emerald. I had this made, past, present, and future, all together. He looked up at Sienna still kneeling. Will you marry me not to replace what I lost, but to build what we found? Will you be Jasper's mother legally, officially? Forever will you be my partner? My love, my second chance. Jasper, sensing something important, reached for Sienna's face. Mama, why crying? Sienna laughed through her tears, looked at this man who'd fired her and then fought to find her, who'd learned to choose love over pride, who'd been broken and was offering her his mended heart. She looked at the baby on her hip, the child she'd saved twice, the child who called her mama and meant it. She looked at the roses, at Celeste's roses blooming as if in approval. She thought about Thomas, about the baby she'd lost and would always mourn, about how that grief had led her here. She thought about second chances, about finding family in unexpected places, about how saving someone else had somehow saved her too. Yese, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Dominic stood, slipped the ring on her finger, pulled her into his arms, kissed her with tenderness and passion and promise careful of Jasper between them. The toddler giggled. Mama Dada kiss. They laughed, pulled apart just enough to include Jasper in their embrace. The three of them standing there in the garden surrounded by roses and hope and the blessing of a woman who'd loved them enough to bring them together even after she was gone. Above them, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of flowers, warm, gentle, full of peace. And Sienna could almost hear in the whisper of leaves and the settling of the world around them Celeste's voice. Thank you. Thank you for loving them, for saving him, for giving them what I couldn't. Thank you for being exactly who they needed. Thank you, Sienna whispered back to the sky, to the woman she'd barely known but who changed her life anyway. Thank you for trusting me with them. The wedding happened 6 months later. Spring again, when Celeste's roses bloomed their brightest. 20 people. Intimate. Perfect. No press. No society judges. Just family. Real family. The kind built on love, not obligation. Vivian attended. She'd softened in the years since the trial. Had apologized to Sienna multiple times. I was protecting my son, she'd explained. But I didn't see that you were protecting him too. Better than I was. I'm sorry. Now she sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, watching her grandson toddle down the aisle as ring bearer. Jasper took his job seriously. Nearly 2 years old now. He walked carefully, carrying the pillow with the rings. When he reached the altar, he looked at Sienna in her simple white dress and said clearly, Mama pretty. The small crowd laughed and cried at once. The minister smiled. Shall we begin? But Jasper wasn't done. He climbed into Sienna's arms, unwilling to leave her even for the ceremony. So they said their vows with the child between them. Dominic promised to honor the woman who'd brought them together, Celeste, and the woman who'd kept them alive, Sienna. To build a life that celebrated the past while embracing the future. Sienna promised to love Jasper as her own, to cherish Dominic's heart, broken and mended, to build a family that welcomed grief and joy together, knowing one made the other possible. The minister's eyes were wet. Family is not always born. Sometimes it's chosen. Sometimes it's saved. And sometimes, like today, it's all three. I now pronounce you husband and wife. They kissed, gentle, full of promise. Jasper between them, giggling and clapping. At the reception held in the garden, Dominic showed a video. Pictures of Celeste, beautiful, smiling, full of life, and then pictures of Sienna with Jasper, the same smile on the baby's face, the same love. Celeste lives on. Dominic said, his voice steady despite the tears. In our son, in our memories, in the love she taught us to give. She's not replaced, she's honored. Every day, every moment. She's part of this family, always. An empty chair sat at the head table. White roses on the seat. Celeste's picture on the chair back. Included, remembered, loved. As the sun set, painting the sky with orange and pink, Sienna and Dominic stood in the garden. Jasper between them, holding both their hands. He'd gotten good at walking now. Ran everywhere actually. Laughed constantly. Showed no signs of the poison that had nearly killed him. A butterfly landed on Jasper's nose. He went cross-eyed, trying to look at it, then dissolved into giggles. The sound was pure joy. "Look, Mama!" "Look, Dada Butterfly." Sienna and Dominic exchanged glances over his head. Everything they'd survived, everything they'd lost, everything they'd found. "Are you happy?" Dominic asked softly. Sienna thought about it, about Thomas, the son she'd never stopped mourning, about the pain that had brought her here, about the impossible choice that had changed everything. "Yes," she said, "and I'm happy. And I think Thomas would be happy too, that his mama's love didn't die with him, that it saved another child, that something good came from something terrible." "Celeste would be happy," Dominic agreed. "She always did like to have the last word, matchmaking from heaven, very like her." They laughed, soft, bittersweet. Jasper tugged their hands. "Come on, Cake." "Nay." Followed their son back to the reception. The evening air smelled of roses. The sky painted itself in gorgeous colors. Music played, people danced, and three people who'd been broken separately became whole together. 2 years later, Sienna stood in the nursery of their Connecticut home. Not Jasper's nursery anymore. He'd graduated to a big boy room with rocket ship bedding and toy trucks everywhere. This nursery was new, fresh, painted soft yellow. She looked down at the bundle in her arms. 6 weeks old, 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes. Her daughter, Dominic's daughter, their daughter. They'd named her Celeste Rose, after the woman who'd brought them together, and after Thomas Rose had been Sienna's mother's name, and they'd decided to honor both children lost too soon. Jasper stood beside her now, 4 years old, staring at his sister with wonder. "She's so small, Mama." "You were this small once," Sienna said. "Really? Really? Even smaller, actually." "Was I that cute?" Sienna laughed. "You were adorable. Still are." Dominic appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching his family with an expression of contentment so complete it almost hurt to witness. "What are you thinking?" Sienna asked. "That I almost missed this. If Amber had succeeded, if you hadn't been brave, if I'd been too proud to ask for help, we wouldn't have this, any of this." "But we do," Sienna said. "That's what matters, we do." Little Celeste made a small sound. Hungry. Her small mouth searched. Sienna settled into the rocking chair by the window, the same chair from Jasper's nursery, moved here and began to feed her daughter. Jasper climbed into Dominic's arms. "Daddy, tell me the story again." "Which story?" "About how Mama saved me." Dominic looked at Sienna. She nodded. "Well," Dominic began, settling into the other chair with Jasper. "Once upon a time there was a baby boy who couldn't eat, and a mama who'd lost her own baby, but still had love to give. And one night when the baby needed help, the mama made a very brave choice. She fed me," Jasper said seriously. "She did, even though it was scary, even though people might not understand. She chose to save you, because that's what mamas do. They love you even when it's hard. Like Mama Celeste loved me before she went to heaven. Exactly like that. You're very lucky, Jasper. You have 2 mamas, one in heaven watching over you, one here taking care of you every day." Jasper thought about this seriously, then said, "And now baby Celeste has 2 mamas too, Mama Sienna and Mama Celeste in heaven. That's pretty special." "Yes," Dominic agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, son. That's very special. Sienna looked at her family, at the husband who'd learned to choose love over pride, at the son who'd survived evil and become joy, at the daughter who represented hope and healing, at the memory of Celeste that lived in all of them, at the memory of Thomas that lived in her heart. Some families were born, some were built. Theirs had been saved, and in saving it, Sienna had saved herself. She'd lost a son, but gained another. Lost hope, but found it again. Lost everything, but discovered that sometimes losing everything made room for something better. Not replacing what was lost, never that, but building something new alongside the memories, letting grief and joy exist together, honoring the past while embracing the future. I love you, she said to the room, to all of them, to the ones here and the ones gone. We love you too, Mama, Jasper said. Dominic mouthed it across the nursery. I love you. And Sienna could almost hear in the rustle of the curtains, in the settling of the house, in the peace that filled every corner, two voices. Celeste's and Thomas's. Both at peace, both approving. Thank you, they seemed to whisper. Thank you for living, for loving, for choosing hope, for showing the world that love doesn't die. It transforms, it grows, it saves. Outside the roses bloomed, red and white intertwined, growing together, stronger together, beautiful because of how they'd survived together. Inside a family breathed in rhythm. 5 hearts, 4 beating, 1 remembered, united in love. And somewhere in a place beyond pain, beyond loss, beyond grief, 2 souls smiled at each other. Celeste and Thomas, the mother who'd given life and the baby who'd never lived it. Both equally important, both equally loved, both forever part of a family that spanned heaven and earth. To adoptive parents, to step-parents, to aunts and uncles and grandparents who step in when needed, to nannies and teachers and strangers who show kindness. Family is not always blood. Sometimes it's choice. Sometimes it's sacrifice. Sometimes it's showing up when no one else will. And that kind of family, the chosen kind, is just as real, just as powerful, just as forever. Love sees no boundaries. Protection knows no limits. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is love when it costs us everything, knowing that in giving everything we might just find what we've been searching for all along. Thank you for reading Sienna and Jasper's story. May you find your own unexpected family. May you have the courage to love across boundaries. And may you always remember the heart has infinite capacity. Loss doesn't empty it. Loss makes room for different kinds of love, all equally precious, all equally real.